All right, so we've been deep inside PHP's head, right? Figuring out its internal logic. But now it's time to see how PHP actually interacts with the outside world. This is where your code stops to just, thinking and really starts doing things, like reading and writing actual files and data.
So far, you've gotten really good at teaching PHP how to think, with loops, conditionals, and functions. But think about it. What good is a brain if it can't read, write, or remember anything? Exactly. So today we're diving into how PHP connects all that clever logic to real, tangible data. We're talking files, code inclusions, and those structured formats you'll be using all the time. Okay, so here's the game plan. First, we'll get into including external code. Then we'll jump into working with files and processing structured data. And finally, we'll tie it all together to see the big picture. When you first start out, it's tempting to just throw all your code into one big file. But as your application gets bigger, oh boy, that becomes an absolute nightmare to manage. PHP has a really elegant solution for this. It lets you split your code across multiple files. And this isn't just about being neat and tidy, it's fundamental to making your code modular, easier to read, and most importantly, reusable. So when it comes to bringing in that external code, you've got two main players, include and require. The key difference really comes down to their personalities. Include is kind of laid back. If it can't find a file, say an optional bit of a template, it'll just give you a warning and try its best to keep the script running. Require though, require is strict. If that file is missing, it's game over. The script stops dead with a fatal error. And that strictness is exactly why you need both. It's all about picking the right tool for the job. You'll want to use require for the absolute non-negotiable parts of your application. We're talking about things like your database connection file or your core class definitions. I mean, if that stuff is missing, your app simply can't run, and you actually want it to stop immediately to prevent bigger problems down the line. Okay, but what happens if you include the same file twice by mistake? Well, that can cause a fatal error because you might end up trying to declare the same function or class again. That's where these _once variants come in. Think of include _once and require _once as smart gatekeepers. Their job is simple, but absolutely vital. They make sure a file is loaded only, once, no matter how many times you might accidentally ask for it. It's a simple way to prevent a whole lot of chaos. So really, don't just think of these as commands for loading files. They're more like the intelligent connectors that let you build a big, complex application from smaller, manageable pieces. They're what let you assemble your project safely and keep everything organized and robust. Okay, so we've got our own house in order by organizing our code. Now it's time to step outside and connect with the world around us. And in the server world, that means interacting with the file system. We're talking about reading and writing files, which is, the most fundamental way to make data stick around. And the whole process for handling files follows this really simple logical pattern. First, you open a connection to a file using fopen. This gives you back something called a file pointer. Just think of it like a bookmark that tells PHP exactly where you are inside that file. Next, you interact with it. You can read data from it or write new data to it. And finally, and this is important, you close the connection with fclose. This frees up resources, and it's just good practice. So remember, open, interact, close. Simple as that. But it's not just about reading and writing. PHP gives you a whole toolkit to manage files safely. I mean, before you even try to open a file, you can check, does it even exist? Do I have permission to read it? Am I allowed to write to it? You can even change a file's permissions programmatically. These functions are your essential safety checks. You use them to look before you leap. And that brings me to a really crucial point. Every single time you work with a file, you're dealing with two things, security and reliability. You can't just assume a file is going to be there or that you'll have the right access. So the golden rule is always validate your paths and always check your permissions. Always. All right, so we've been dealing with plain old text files, which is great. But in the real world, data usually has, structure. It's not just a random stream of characters. So now we're going to teach our PHP script to speak the common languages of data, the formats that other systems and applications use to talk to each other. First up, we've got CSV, which stands for comma-separated values. This is the humble, reliable workhorse of data exchange. If you can put it in a spreadsheet, you can probably put it in a CSV file. Think user lists, sales reports, product data, anything tabular. And PHP has fantastic built-in functions that make reading and writing these files row by row an absolute breeze.
Next up is JSON, or JavaScript Object Notation. And let me tell you, this is the universal language of modern web APIs. It's incredibly lightweight, it's easy for us humans to read, and it's a piece of cake for machines to parse. PHP support for it is just beautiful. With two simple functions, JSON encode and JSON decode, you can flip back and forth between PHP arrays and JSON strings effortlessly.
I mean, just look at how straightforward this is. You take a normal PHP array, you run it through one function, and bam, you get a perfectly formatted JSON string. It's now ready to be sent off to a web browser or some other API. The power you get from that one line of code is just incredible. And of course, we can't forget about XML, the extensible markup language. Now, while JSON has definitely become the cool kid on the block for modern APIs, XML is still a heavyweight champion. You'll find it all over the place in enterprise systems, really complex configuration files, and a ton of legacy APIs. And don't worry, PHP has powerful tools like Simple XML ready to help you wrangle those documents. So here's the scary thought. How do you know what a file really is? Someone could upload a malicious PHP script but name it cute_puppy.jpg. Your code sees the .jpg and thinks it's fine. That's where the file info extension comes in. It's like a digital detective. It doesn't care about the file name. It looks inside the file at its actual contents to figure out its true identity, its MIME type. This is an absolutely essential tool for security, especially when you're dealing with file uploads. Okay, let's zoom out and put all these pieces together. We've seen how to organize our own code into neat, reusable modules. We've learned how to reach out and interact directly with files on the server. And, maybe most importantly, we've taught our code to speak the structured languages that power almost all data exchange on the modern web. When you really think about it, all of these tools, from a simple include for your website's header, to writing an error message to a log file, to decoding a JSON response from an API, they all do one thing. They transform a static script into a living, breathing, dynamic application. This is the backbone of any content-driven website. So that brings up a really interesting question, doesn't it? We spent all this time talking about how to handle data that's already on our server. But what about data coming from the user? What happens when someone fills out a form on your website or tries to upload a file? How do we handle that? Well, that's exactly where we're going next. We're going to dive into how PHP listens for and processes those incoming HTTP requests. We'll look at how it grabs data from forms and, crucially, how it manages file uploads in a secure way. It's the other half of the conversation. So, continue your journey with our next explainer, PHP HTTP request handling. This is Developer Roadmaps. Map your path, build your career.